Tēnā koutou katoa, or I really should, I feel like saying more kia ora whānau, and let's all introduce the project by everybody who has some role in the Waikato Healthy Rivers Waiora project in any capacity, past or present. Let's stand up so we can all see you and see each other. Wow. Thanks.
Wonderful. Is this the first one?
My name is Justine Young. I work for the Waikato Regional Council. I'm not a scientist. I work in the Science and Strategy Directorate though. And myself and Katie Paul will co-present today, and we're surrounded here by a bevy of technical experts, which is marvellous to have. So I'll pass on to Katie, and we'll hear see a short video, and then we'll have some slides.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Katie Paul talking ngō Te Arawa ahau. I'm from the waka or tribe of Te Arawa. I'm the General Manager of a new post-settlement entity called the Te Arawa River Iwi, and I, along with 4 other iwi and General Managers, are part of the co-management, co-governance team for the Waikato River. I've been in the role for 1 year. I come from a policy government law background and was brought home, asked to come home by the tribe to lead our trust in a post-settlement environment. A completely new job with no roadmap, but we're finding our way. So 1 year into the job, and because I have to talk to quite a lot of people about what it means to be part of the river settlement, after 30 meetings and 30 conversations around the same subject, I commissioned a video, which I hope gives a better sense of what the river settlement is about and who the people are behind it.
Te Arawa are famous for our lakes and geothermal areas. Our association with the beautiful Waikato River is less well known, even though we have held a kaitiaki or guardianship responsibility for more than 700 years.
Mai pohaturoa ki te Waiheke o Huka. The Waikato River, running from Pohaturoa kia Tiamuri to te Waiheke o Huka, is the domain that Ngāti Tahu Ngāti Whāua have held mana whenua over since the arrival of our eponymous ancestor Tahu Matua in 1250 AD. We are one of 3 iwi that are part of the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust that breached a settlement agreement and therefore became kaitiaki of this precious resource.
Te Arawa's region includes our distinctive geothermal areas and power stations. We also have hydropower generation on macro and micro scale. One example of a micro hydro generator is Ngāti Kiaroa Ngāti Tuara scheme that powers their marae complex from the Pokaitu stream.
Pokaitu starts at the northern end of our mountain. Other tributaries that are part and parcel of the streams that run from there form Pokaitu that's running past us today. Ngāti Kia Ngāti Tuara are privileged to be part and parcel of Te Arawa River Iwi Trust, to be 1/3 responsibility to the health of Waikato. Then that's the main purpose. But the association for Ngāti Kia Ngāti Tuara to this river goes back many, many generations.
The two Haurangi were displaced by the 1886 eruption of Mount Tarawera and eventually relocated at Whakarewarewa.
The Tuarangi Tribal Authority have a kaitiaki role, really takes in all our lands, tribal lands in the Waikato Valley that flow down through the Whirinaki River and directly into the Waikato River.
The main challenge for the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust is to engage our iwi in the requirements of being 21st century kaitiaki. This guardianship is a big task because it encompasses more than the traditional role of conservation and customary use. Today, it also requires connecting our people back to their heritage on and around the river.
The urban drift had a huge impact for everyone, and we were no different. We lost a lot of our leaders, and I'm talking about more resource base. We have to build up today to something that we can be proud of, and that's having te reo as strong as possible, the knowledge and the history of our rivers, our waterways, our swamps, and of course the association with Waikato.
Co-governance and co-management is a new experience for our river iwi. It involves active participation and decision making in the restoration and protection of the Waikato River. That means we need to attend council meetings, be involved in policy construction, as well as setting the regulations relating to the river. So it's quite a new journey for our people.
Contemporary kaitiakitanga also involves working with a wide range of other groups with interests in the river.
The Te Arawa River Iwi Trust has 3 goals. In Māori terms, it's mana tangata, mana taiao and mana mātauranga.
Mana tangata participation has involved the Trust in funding 30 iwi-driven projects to connect our people with conserving, preserving and developing the river resource. Mana taiao participation includes working with a wide range of organisations to create policies and procedures to restore and protect the Waikato River, tributaries and environs for all its users. This includes co-management with 5 iwi, Ngāti Tūwharetoa, Raukawa, Maniapoto, Waikato Tainui and Te Arawa. Mana mātauranga participation involves upholding our tikanga, our ways of doing things, preserving waihi tūpuna, our special ancestral places, and enhancing mātauranga, the knowledge and wisdom of Te Arawa River iwi.
In more recent times, our regional and local economy has become reliant on this precious resource. The Waikato River generates 15% of New Zealand's total electricity supply. There are farmers, dairy farmers, sheep and cattle farmers who are also reliant on the precious resource. So this is a long journey and we are only at the start of it.
Haere mai tātou. Join with us, the Te Arawa River Iwi Trust, supporting kaitiakitanga of the Waikato River for the next 700 years.
In that 5-minute video, I hope it captures, I guess, some of the things that we talk about, like values, kaitiakitanga, what it means, but behind all the work that we're doing is a tribe of people. I should probably reiterate that there are 4 other iwi with me in the co-governance space. And when they tell their stories and when they explain their values, they're inextricably linked with their ancestors, their tribal places, their tribal boundaries. So you've only seen really one part of the Waikato River, and that's the upper Waikato, from Hooker Falls through to Atemuri Dam. But up further is Raukawa, Maniapoto and Tainui, who have their own stories, their own ancestral places, their own communities and groups of people. I fortunately only have 3 river iwi to deal with. In the case of Waikato Tainui, they have something like 64 hapu committees that they need to converse with. Raukawa has another large grouping. So we're each developing in our own way our part of the river settlement. I should say that we are in legislation. We're part of an act, and now the architecture around the Waikato River So the three iwi, Waikato Tainui was the first. They have their own River Act. Tuwharetō, Raukawa and Te Arawa have their act, and of course Maniapoto for the Waipaha catchment have their act. The three pieces of legislation in our case was as new as 2010, so we're only about 5 years old. We're still ourselves updating our communities on the settlement and what it means and their responsibilities under the settlement. But enshrined in those pieces of legislation is Te Ture Whaimana, or it's the vision and strategy of the Waikato River. That vision and strategy is incredibly important. It's the direction-setting document that the government has set out for this resource, and it's one that all 5 river iwi and the councils are now we're instructed to implement. But how do we do that? And that's the process that we're involved in with the Healthy Rivers Plan. I'll probably leave it at that for the moment and introduce the rest of the crew.
Well, I'd like to introduce, starting with staff, Bill Vant, Water Quality Scientist at Waikato Regional Council. Also in the back of the room we've got Dominique Neuton, who's a Science Manager at the Council. But Bill and I have had quite a few conversations and have worked together in the past in the Lake Taupo catchment, which of course was a limit setting exercise concerned with nitrogen. We've also lucky to have today, and it's 2 members of what we're calling our technical leaders group sitting at the front here, being John Quinn and Bryce Cooper, and then of course we've got Mike Scarsbrook also on the technical leaders group. All the other people that stood up, amazing. We've got 3 members of our collaborative group here today. We've got people from the Waikato River Authority and also a past experienced person in Jenny Vernon in a limit setting process. So that's who we've got in the room. Everybody who stood up, that this is our project and our river. Being a very careful and obedient bureaucrat, I took careful note of the 5 things that we were meant to be covering in the presentation today. It's been a bit of a scurry, so the theme of at least where I got to, and Bill Vanton and I in discussions and other people, is the theme of this is there's information overload. That's how I feel right now as an individual. So that's kind of my theme of this talk. But what I am going to do is follow the structure that we were given and talk about. We've had that marvellous introduction. You couldn't get anything better in listening to Katie and watching that video. So I won't talk more about that. I will show you a little bit about the project structures and processes. I've already kind of hinted at that by calling the collaborative group and the technical leaders group. But really the guts of this is how information and knowledge can inform choices. And to just explain that a little, I said I wasn't a scientist, I'm a policy advisor. So I very much come from where is this project going? It is going towards some recommendations to a committee, and some of those will go into things that will happen outside the RMA, by the council, by other organisations. Some of those recommendations will go into drafting a regional plan and an associated Section 32 document. So we've heard about zips and dips and what was the Wellington one? A whip. We haven't got a fancy name for ours, but that's definitely where we're going. We're heading towards an RMA plan and a whole bunch of other stuff first. Yeah. that's just to show you the logos of the partners that Katie's talked to you about. I've never seen in one half day quite so many diagrams and boxes and arrows, and here's another one, but you know there's less on this page, so think yourselves lucky, unless you kind of have brains that like that kind of thing. I do, but I did work with a lawyer once who said, don't be showing me another diagram, give me words. So it's all preference really, isn't it? But here's a diagram, and really importantly, we've got the Healthy Rivers Waiora Committee. That's what Katie was talking about, and her role on the Taupu Hautu, which is the mirror organisation of the partners at a senior staff level. The engine room, I guess you could say, and people in the hot seat right now are people on the collaborative stakeholder group. We've heard a lot in themes today about scientists being servants. The Technical Alliance was set up, interestingly for the Council and differently for the Council, external from the business as usual model of relying on internal people to say, what are the trends, what are the gaps, what research do we need to fill? That role's been handed over to a technical alliance, and that's made up of a leaders group, and there's 3 people here today, and then a whole bunch of people that they can contract and rely on. That includes staff as well. The end point of this and the final decision makers, and Katie mentioned the 3 river acts, but the final decision maker on the resource management plan and what gets notified is the Waikato Regional Council. So much has been handed over, but the final say on the notified plans stays with the Council. Now I'm showing you this focus statement because this was a really important part of the project. It was something that was started by the councillors. They workshopped and said, shall we do this project? Shall we put money towards it? What does it mean? And then, importantly, it was taken on and refined by the collaborative group themselves. I think of this statement, and we've had a lot of great advice from, and we've learnt from LAWF and looked at what you guys did, and we've looked at Canterbury, and we've also had advice from people like Vivian Twyford, who's an expert in these collaborative governance projects. And the idea of having a central point that everybody is grabbed hold of, so we're not having everybody in the room solving a different problem. That's the point of this focus statement. You could think of it as a beacon on the hill, because in all the complexity and confusion, it's something that encapsulates what the project is about. The first bit of it is kind of familiar territory for limit setting, and just a little bit of info about the project. There are 4 contaminants that were seen as the key ones. We're talking diffuse contaminants largely, although we're not excluding point sources that have been consented. And I've highlighted that phrase, practical options, because for me the key part of this is, have we got organisational capacity to implement, and what does this mean for all of the landowners in the catchment? So, and Chris and I were chatting about what this all might mean, and when are we going to get to that really hard stuff at lunchtime. There's around about 5,000 farmers just to start with. And we've heard a little about the vision and the strategy, and it being the primary direction setting document. Well, that phrase, safe to swim in and take food from, and there's more words around that, the entire length of the river for future generations, that's just one of the objectives in the vision and strategy, which is in legislation, it's in our regional policy statement, it's the thing that we have to look toward. And when there's a conflict in this process and thinking about the future, the vision and strategy will prevail. That's how high up it is in terms of compared to the national policy statement. I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure now. So I just wanted to put a little ad in for a report that's about to be finished. This is something that Ministry for the Environment has funded. Roger Bannister's team, the collaborative exchange, was mentioned. One of the things that's coming out of that is some case studies. Now, I recommend this report for how did things get decided, what got decided, when by, how did you choose. It's from a council perspective, a staff perspective, but it takes you through in a really nicely written report what the situation in terms of setting up that collaborative process in the Waikato has been. It's also an ad for my friend and ex-colleague Wendy Boyce, who's now consulting. I'm her agent. Here's the group, 24 seats. Hopefully you can read for yourselves what sectors and interests are represented there. A little different from the community-based put your hand up and nominate yourself. Again, that report says exactly how things were, how people were chosen. To give you a really quick idea, everybody was invited into the room, and one of the things that happened is that they were given beans to vote on how many seats and how many people, how many seats per sector and per community. And then each one of those coloured boxes were told, go away and choose your own people. The exception is the community seats, and again, similar to Wellington situation happened there. I'm going to talk to you a little now about what the collaborative group has done up till now. The grey area is the Waikato region. The coloured area is the catchment of the Waikato and Waipa rivers. There are 5 blobs. To take you very quickly through the differences, and Katie's already alluded to the difference in the very high quality but impounded water that's flowing out of Lake Taupō is number 1. Going down into the middle Waikato, the water is released from being impounded. The E. coli doesn't have its time to die in the water, and the sediment isn't settling out anymore. You go down to the confluence of the Waipa River. Now the Waipa, different geology, different soil type, very erodible. An enormous amount of sediment flowing into the Waipa and staying in suspension. Even though there's plenty of nutrient going into that river, my understanding is that they don't have time to grow because there's simply not enough light for the plants, the microscopic plants. Lots more microbes in the main stem, really variable in the tributaries. So I swim in one of them, and it's a stony bottom, beautiful little stream. But once you get into the Waipa main stem, it'll be familiar to people where they see it coming into the Waikato River and the difference in the two waters there. And then the lower Waikato being a combination of all those things. So I'm kind of looking over to the science types over there. Bill taught me through this, so yep, oh thanks, well cool. Gold star. You know, making sense of information, this slide was shown at the forum. So John Quinn showed you a photo of that forum that was just last week. And we had something on the table that we called Murky Man. So it was the outline of a person, and it had that question on there. So the value, one of the values is swimmability. That's important to people in this project. And it's right central in the vision and strategy. How do you know whether it's swimmable? Well, again, through a lot of discussions and meetings with the collaborative group and a lot of work by the technical people, clarity was settled on as being an attribute. And the collaborative group, not only do they bring their own knowledge and information to the table and go back to their sectors and bring in information from the sectors, but also the fantastic thing about this project is that the engagement strategy that was done at the beginning has got processes and time and resources to bring in information from the wider community. So there's a public survey going on right now as well. There's drop-in sessions that the people in the group will be fronting themselves in the next few weeks. When I said before that my personal feeling right now is that I'm overloaded with information, that's just how I feel about this. What I'm showing you here on the slide is some of the streams of information that are being generated from the technical leaders group. What I just showed you was one part of that, which is attributes that can show whether values are being met. And we're very faithfully following the linear and in my opinion not that helpful process that's set out in the National Policy Statement. That diagram that people are familiar with that got attached to the back of the discussion document, it doesn't really help you say what's the problem here, what do we do about it, whose behaviour do we need to change, and that's what the group is grappling with. So here are streams of information that you can ask the various technical people who are in the room today that are being generated. What do I want to say about that? Well, as somebody who's been in a regional council for a number of years and has been involved in a limit setting process, the one stream of or two streams of information that I'm more familiar with are the biophysical modelling and of course the attributes and the economic modelling, but at a much lesser scale, a much smaller, more contained, more that'll do for now scale. All of those elements are present in this project and they are, and I'm thinking about John Bright's high, you know, how important is this? How fraught are the issues? How big a deal is this? It's a very big deal. I'm guessing that that's the reason why we're throwing so much resource and so much effort into the modelling. And it's also no accident that the joint economic venture work that was done before the MPS came out chose Waikato as a case study. The mātauranga Māori is very new for council staff. So speaking for myself, bringing that in and from the beginning and saying what does this mean, how does this fit with other knowledge, how do we get our heads around this in terms of monitoring for the future and understanding the limit setting and what people need to do now. That's new. The flow-on impacts, in my experience, that was qualitative description. There's a whole element of that that's bringing in, and Liz Wedderburn, I'm sorry Liz, you had your head ducked, so I didn't introduce you as a really important part of the technical leaders group, is bringing that in, and as a policy advisor, the work that Liz Wedderburn is bringing in on that and integrating everything is very closely aligned to what does this mean for people, and what are some possible futures, and how can we as a community understand what they mean for us. So I think that bringing in that integration is a really key part to this project. But you know what, it's all happening at once. And as Bill commented the other day, he said, we produced an enormous amount of information in the Lake Taupo project, but we kind of had more time to do it. There was, I'm looking at you, Jenny, because you were the chairman at the time, and fantastic leadership and saying, look, we need to get this technical stuff right, so let's not rush into rules straight away. This project has got a notification date of early next year. And as I said, we're halfway through the meetings that have been set down for the collaborative group, and we've yet to develop the possible future scenarios to be modelled, although what's happening in the technical space is an enormous amount of information is being generated. The first thing that I wanted to remind you of is when you're thinking about knowledge informing choices, the first thing that occurred to me is, who is it that needs to know this? So for me in my day job, the people that I'm dealing with most are the collaborative stakeholder group, but there's all those other people in the project, and each one of them needs to understand what this information means, what's going to happen, what their place is. And even though in the project structure we've very carefully set out terms of reference, and we're very clear about who makes the decisions, so we didn't rush into that. That was a really great part of this project, I think. But there's a lot of people involved there, and very few of them get to do this as their day job. They're doing this on the side, they're doing this amongst an enormous amount of other work, and as Katie touched on, what we're really aware of is for River Iwi, this project and this plan change is just one part of the vision and strategy, implementing it, and it's only one part of everything else an iwi group has to do. I think some time ago it might have been Julian that said, think of us like the government. You guys are just a regional council, we do everything. This is just one thing, this environment space and this limit setting space. So keep that in mind as you think about the amount of information that you've heard yesterday and this morning. I mean, I don't know whether people here can hold all that in their heads. Can you hold it all in your heads? Maybe you can because it's very familiar. But this isn't at the fingertips of everybody, this technical information. And as I said, a lot of it is new for the council, and there are new roles coming into play here. Because what Bill and I were talking about is that back in the day, I just used to trot down to his office and go, Bill, what about this and that and the other thing? And then we'd have a big old chat, and I'd go away and go, oh yeah, I get that now, I can write that in the section 32. Really importantly, Tony Petch, who lots of you will know, used to go down and chat to Bill, deeply technical info, and then be available for the decision makers to translate that information. And to be a sounding board and to have a lot of day-to-day input free. So that's not happening so much now. This is a big project. People sit in different places, there's more info. It just makes, yeah, there's bureaucracy. It just makes it harder, that's all. It's not impossible. And we have heard quite a lot this morning about translating information and new ways of making sense of information. So that's essentially the challenge that, as I see it, is making sense of it all in the first place. So I'm going to skip over that and show you, just so you get the essence of what the job is from now on. The collaborative stakeholder group is, in the next meeting in a couple of weeks, going to develop a range of scenarios, and I think, Liz, you call those plausible futures. And there was a good theme this morning about not tossing things out before you've at least tested them. Okay, so we've got some plausible futures. I showed you all of that information that's being worked on by the Technical Leaders Group and brought to the collaborative group as an update every month. It's the Technical Leaders Group that provides the implications, and they do that with the economic modelling and the integrated assessment. And of course, whoever put the slide together, there are all of the other themes that I showed you, so the mātauranga Māori as well, is how to take all those themes and bring them together in order to show the people who are making the call, that's the collaborative group, what this might mean for people. Because as I said, there's quite possibly at least 5,000 people who will be directly affected. What I didn't mention before, but what's on that slide, is that the collaborative group have developed what they call policy selection criteria. Now, they did that before they had any policies in front of them, because you need to have a way of saying yes to this one, maybe not to that one. So that was the idea of those policy selection criteria. Of course, the Resource Management Act has its own, and there are other frameworks, economic based or other. Well, there's one other framework that the regional councils use, and that's the policy choice framework, in terms of, do we have compulsory, voluntary, what kind of instrument, is it effects based, is it activities based, the kind of policy churn that often happens out of sight, or at least it did in business as usual. That's also the job for the collaborative group. They've got to evaluate the policy options. So the idea is for them to get a first look at the modelling outputs in about July, end of July, August, and then my role and the two other policy people and other people in the council is to help the collaborative group think through, using their own criteria, what possible policy options there are. So right now we've taken some ideas for sediment that the collaborative group have come up with, and we're running those through their selection criteria and trying our best not to say the answer depends, because of course the devil's in the detail with this policy stuff. What it's showing to me is that for contaminants, very disparate catchment, a whole bunch of information that we've yet to see fully and get our heads around, and I'm including myself in that now, because my job is to help the collaborative group put together their recommendation report, or their ZIP, or their whatever they want to call it, and then draft the regional plan and take it back to them. So we've heard themes about getting communication right, getting the right people, getting the right level. Going back to that focus statement, that beacon on the hill, are we all still on the same page? Were we on the same page in the first place? Are we all still solving the same problem? And just to close, again, that just reiterates where the group's at. And the last point is to say that it was kind of interesting to note that one of the topics that the Land and Water Forum will be looking at in a small group is allocation. That hot button of fairness came up on day one of the collaborative group meeting. There's a lot at stake here.
Kia ora, Justine. See if I can find you the microphone.